Hey there everybody, it's Mark Curley. Just before I get underway with the real video, I want you guys to join me in the unboxing of my latest comp copies of Brody's Ghost number 3. Last time I did this I tried to use scissors, and it was the most pathetic unboxing in the history of YouTube, but this time I finally got myself a little hobby knife here, and let's see what's inside. There it is, my friends, Brody's Ghost, Book 3. And I don't know if it's zooming in there, you can see the back of it. I've really been looking forward to this one. I'm going to push the box out of the way. I brought along my other copies here of Brody's Ghost Book 1, Book 2, and Book 3. There's going to be 6 books altogether, so we got halfway through the story here. Thanks in advance for anyone who decides to check out any of these books, but let's go ahead and get back to the job at hand, and that is a how to draw video. Alright, so today we're going to be learning how to draw the muscles of the chest. Of course, very important if you want to draw superhero comics or action-oriented comics of any kind. And I have always been sort of winging it, I must confess, over the years. And so to prepare for this video, I decided to look at more of like a medical diagram that shows the muscles of the chest. And I would advise you all, if you're serious about this, to definitely do that at least once. Find out what these muscles look like underneath the skin so as to make your drawings more realistic, and I can use this almost as a cheat sheet. Pretend like I actually know all the Latin names for this stuff. But in any case, let's go ahead and get started here. I'm going to begin with some just rough guidelines. Now, I told you that we're going to be drawing the chest, and so for me that means that we have to sort of limit the range of the subject matter here, because I could do a whole separate video, in fact I probably will, on the arms, the neck area, different stuff like that. So, but just to get you started so that we're all on the same page, I'm beginning by drawing the upper area of the chest, the pecs, as it were. I'm going to be tempted to keep doing Arnold Schwarzenegger. The pecs, yeah, you got to draw the pecs. Try to limit that before I lose all of my viewers. But I'm starting here with this, the area of the what is actually called the pectoralis major, and there, of course, it breaks into 2 regions wider than they are tall. I'm finding, at least in the sort of photo reference that I looked at, and it's sort of interesting as you look at that medical diagram, and then you look at photographs. That there's a bit of a reality check. Sometimes your medical diagram is exaggerating certain things. So it's, in a way, I think what you end up doing is combining knowledge of the anatomy of the muscles underneath the skin with photographs of real life, so that you're not getting carried away with overly defined muscles. I'm just lightly sketching in the arms. Like I said, that I think is something for another day. A completely separate video that will cover that area. But of course, a bodybuilder type of character, and that's kind of what I'm dealing with here. Very muscle-bound type character is going to have the upper area of the chest becomes very wide, just as in a cartoonish way we expect it to be. But of course, it's based on reality. And so, beginning with a sort of a straight line across here, you saw how I did that, and that sort of indicates the collarbone. I would go ahead and get these 2 pec muscles in before moving down, and this is where I got a little confused from the way I imagined it to be versus what it really is. The abs, the so-called abs, which is actually the rectus abdominis, actually extends from the belly all the way up to the bottom of the pecs. I didn't realize that. I thought there was some sort of gap between those 2. For years, that's the way I always drew it. And so it shows you that you do have to study these things to make sure you didn't memorize it incorrectly to begin with. And then another thing I noticed as I was studying this, which I found kind of interesting, is that this idea of the 6-pack, which I always thought of was just sort of shorthand describing the muscles of the abdomen is actually based on a reality, to a certain degree. It divides into the upper area of the abdomen divides into these 6 compartments. And I was like, you got to be kidding me, that's real? But it does in fact seem to be real. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 right up here, and then this lower area of the abdomen is doesn't divide into those little compartments so much. At least when I studied the sort of medical diagram, it's always depicted that way. I'm going to go ahead and lightly do the other arm here. Again, highly muscle-bound type of a character that I'm drawing here. I imagine him as a lifeguard. That was my excuse for, why is this guy standing around with no shirt on, other than to show off his incredible physique. But I thought, hey, he's a lifeguard, right? I mean, this is part of the job. So I've got kind of the rough guidelines in place here. And like I said, this is not going to be about drawing the head, but we do, of course, have to get... So I'm going to do that part in time-lapse. Forgive me for speeding through this real quick. Alright, so you can see that in addition to loosely sketching in the head, I also added a little more definition to the arms and got in these muscles or tendons of the neck. And again, I think that's going to require, this whole neck area, the shoulder area, is going to require a separate video. But let's go ahead and get into drawing the muscles of the upper chest here. Now, as I said, the pecs are considerably wider than they are tall. Especially from this angle, if you're looking up at it a little bit, which I thought would be more interesting than just, what I call the police lineup style. But I noticed that the real definition of the pec muscles is coming at the edges here, not so much in the middle. So we have this line, that I have drawn here, but in reality, when you look at photographs and so much, apart from the really intense bodybuilders, which I think, we all know can get a little extreme, this area in the middle is not so defined. Can you believe that? A phone call. I forgot to unplug my phone. I've almost done 200 videos now. That's the first time that's happened to me. I've been lucky, I think. You know what it was? It was just like a sales call, interrupting my video. Can you believe it? In any case, let's get back to the lesson at hand. But I think what I was getting at was that the definition of the pectoralis major is primarily on the lower edges, not so much along the center here. And as far as the nipples, where they are placed, they are sort of roughly between the two, maybe a little further between these two lines, I should have said, but a little closer maybe to this edge line, which it's a little bit strange for me to say that, because even this edge line, my so-called edge line, is not a real line of definition that's seen on the body so clearly. It is when you look at the the medical drawing of muscles, you will see the band of muscles coming across the biceps, I guess it is. But in real life, the real definition is coming right here around the area of the armpit and at the edge of the pecs, not so much here or here, although you can sort of get those lines in there to just help you understand. Now, let's go ahead and get down to drawing the six-pack, the classic six-pack, and it was sort of a revelation for me as I studied to see that it really is an actual, sort of arrangement of 6 muscles here. Different bodybuilders, I think, do different things, and sometimes you'll see, I've seen photos where these muscles are sort of interlacing almost. One will be higher, the next will be a little lower, and I wonder if that has to do with different workouts that people do or just the way that they're born or whatever, but I'm a little hesitant to get too defined in this area, because a lot of, I think you see that in superhero comics a lot. So what I'm doing is sort of deliberately getting some definition in here that I'm going to erase away. in a second, because again, I always like to, with this kind of thing, to do a reality check and look at photographs and say, well, to what degree do we actually see lines like this? And the truth is, the answer is no, you're not going to see so much. So, brace yourself, those of you who believe that I never erase. I do erase. I'm erasing away. It's kind of a drawing technique, actually, sometimes, rather than kill yourself trying to make these super light lines. Sometimes you go ahead and make the lines and then erase away to make it a little more subtle. But depending on how the light is hitting, I think sometimes photographers with these bodybuilder types will find the perfect way of lighting it so that every muscle is shown off. But I would say primarily, in terms of shading, and we're going to do a lot more shading later on, the shading is going to be more seen on the sides, maybe just a little bit down the middle, rather than getting each and every one of these little areas of the so-called six-pack hyper-defined. But then I want to get onto this other part here that is called the serratus anterior. And I had noticed this from years ago when I was studying how to draw, whatever, a Superman or some kind of a character like that they do put these, and I always thought it was sort of like the indication of the ribs. I don't think it is. I don't think it is supposed to be the ribs. It's supposed to be these muscles that come in here, and it seems to me that they divide into two bits. One that's nearest by the six-pack area, and then you get a secondary region of them back here. I hope this is sort of showing up. And this seems to be musculature called the serratus anterior. And so you're going to, there's not much space for it over here, but you would sort of do some rough indications of that going on over here as well. And then finally, this area down here is called the external oblique, or the abdominis external oblique. It's sort of, to me, it looks like the serratus anterior area just sort of extends into this area down here, this region down here. But one thing I want to point out to you, and I see this on bodybuilders and so forth, very strongly defined. And as I looked for, the sort of Latin term, I was having trouble finding what this is called. This area down here, it's down near the bottom of the sort of belly area. And, I'm talking about what things would we see a line defining in real life? Well, this area down here that I'm doing quite darkly, in some photographs you'll see is very strongly defined on some people, and who knows what it comes from having done so many sit-ups or whatever. But I'm asking you now, if you know the name, for this area down here, it's a line, you see it even on classical sculptures, it comes down here. Educate me, my friends, because I couldn't find what that was called. The best I could say is that this is the lower edge of this area called the external oblique. But what I'm going to do right now, and I hope this doesn't frustrate anyone, I'm going to go ahead and darken in some of the other areas here before I go into adding extra shading to give you some advice on how shading can further define these areas of the chest muscles. Okay, so you can see I used the old black Prismacolor to give final line work just to the edges of the body here. And I may not be able to do all of this real time, but I want to give you some sense of where the shading is going to go. And let's go ahead and start here at the bottom of the pecs. You're going to get quite a lot of heavy shadow right here along the bottom. Like I said, this sort of outer edge that gets very strongly defined. Now I'm going to very lightly shade toward the top here, adding perhaps even more definition than would be visible in real life. I mean, a lot of times illustrators are doing that. They're sort of adding extra definition, just clarity to help the viewer see what it is they're looking at. You're always sort of balancing between, well, is this photo real? Because there wouldn't be a line there in real life, right? I mean, that's part of what you're considering. But then, otherwise, your job as an illustrator, depending on what you're doing, is to, get some clarity in there, maybe visual shorthand that helps the viewer see exactly what it is they're looking at. So I'm going to get quite a lot of shading going on right here underneath the pecs, right in the sort of armpit area. And like I said, this area in here that I had observed years ago in like superhero comics, I had thought was sort of maybe partially invented, but as I looked at the actual medical diagrams, I found it was quite real. It has this, I've always thought of it as having kind of like a fish gills kind of a look to it. But you want to get some gradual shading going on all along here to sort of, assuming in this image that the light is coming from here, the upper right, then all of my shading is going to come along here on the upper left, or I mean the sort of lower left, I guess I should say. And I'm adding in the area down here. I mean, I may be like almost exaggerating too much as I look at this in terms of defining the six-pack area. I'm not a huge fan of like overdoing it, so I'm going to go ahead and try to erase back just a little bit to make it a little more subtle. But, one thing I don't want to forget for sure is the location of the navel, the belly button. It goes right down here at the bottom of the six-pack. That so-called six-pack area. That's where that's going to be. A little helpful thing. And again, even just in preparing for this lesson, I feel like I have learned a lot about these muscles that I, as I confessed to, had sort of just been winging it for years. And it was high time that I knuckled down and tried to learn the real anatomy. And in fact, if I embark on a whole series of videos like this about muscles, and real anatomy, as I intend to do, that's going to be very helpful for me. So I should thank you, my YouTube viewers, for having finally got me to, sit down and study this stuff. Well, I think I've kind of got most of what you need to know in terms of the shading of the muscles. I don't want this video to go on forever. I know I've done some videos recently that go for a good 20 minutes or so. Who knows, this may be the same, actually. But I am going to go ahead and kick it into time-lapse to finish off the rest of this illustration, and then we'll be back for a few final words. Alright, well, there you have our muscle-bound lifeguard. Never fear, dudes and dudettes of Malibu, for I am keeping you ever under my watchful eye. I hope you found this useful. I certainly did. There was a lot of these things I was learning kind of for the first time as I prepared for this video, the actual details of where these various muscles go. I still have a lot to learn, let's be honest about that. But I do hope to do a whole bunch of other videos, do the arms, do sort of how to draw the neck and shoulders, different stuff like that. The only problem, I must say, with doing videos like this, as a man, as I look at this drawing, I'm like, man, I need to go work out, right? It is true, yes, you need to go work out. You don't just sit around drawing manga all day, it's making you flabby. So, clearly, maybe I can work on both, my drawing of the muscles and my building of the muscles. But let's go ahead and thank anyone who has supported me by getting Brody's Ghost Book 3. It's actually out, it's in the stores, of course, available at Amazon, different places like that. Miki Falls, another series of mine, and Mastering Manga, my new instructional book, also out there. Thank you so much to all of you who have got my books, and just for watching my videos, for subscribing, all the different things you do to support me. I greatly appreciate it. You know what happened this past, just yesterday? I passed 100 million video views. How is that even possible? It isn't. There must be something wrong with YouTube's algorithm. I don't know how they came up with that. 100 million video views. It's all thanks to you guys for watching, for supporting me. I'm blown away by that. I can't even believe it. But it is obviously time for me to lay down the pencil. I want to thank you all for watching this video. I hope you found it useful, and I'll be back with another one real soon.